Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Shane Ohly from Maria Events. This evening, I'm here with my colleague Eleanor, and we're absolutely delighted to have David Parrish here, winner of the 2023 Cape Wrath Ultra. I'm just going to talk a little bit of housekeeping first of all, and then we'll get started. So, first of all, if you have chat, Q&A, anything like that, please. It doesn't really matter which of the messages you send your messages into, so you can use the chat function or the Q&A. I've already put a little hello to everybody. Ian has just said hello to everyone. That's great. Maybe tell us where you're coming from, where you're watching from this evening. As we chat this evening, we will be asking David some questions. I'm going to share the conversation with my colleague Eleanor, so our regular watchers will know that ordinarily I kind of do the questions and Eleanor does the Q&A at the end. We're going to mix it up for the new year, and Eleanor and I are going to kind of do a bit of a duo act. So I think, finally, one other thing to say would be, if there's any technical problems, Ella and I are actually in different locations. Obviously, David's in Scotland, I presume. Just bear with us. Either Ella or I can take over, and we are recording this, so we'll be sticking it on YouTube afterwards, and you can watch it in your own time as well. Great, Eleanor, over to you.
Great. So first question up for David. Could you talk us a little bit through your running background before Cape Wrath Ultra? And is it true that Cape Wrath Ultra was actually your first ever ultra?
Yes. Hi, everyone. That was my first ultra ever. Before that, though, I did do quite a lot of running. So I started when I was in my late teens. And slowly sort of built it up from there, not really knowing much about running, probably not having the right kit, trainers, etc. And then in my early 20s, I started racing sort of 5Ks and 10Ks locally, and then kind of left to join the military. Maintained my interest in running to decompress and stuff like that, and enjoyed my runs with my headphones in, but I gained a bit of weight, so I wasn't a great runner. And then as I was leaving, I got back into it. It was kind of like 4 years ago. I was looking at park runs and taking part in those. And around the same time, I got into hill running, hill walking, and long distance trekking. So I did the Cape Wrath Trail, and then that led me into entering for the ultra in 2023. That's basically my background. So not extensive, but I've always kind of enjoyed running.
So I'm right, and you've just said that you walked the trail before you did the ultra.
Yep. Yeah, I walked the trail in 2021. That took 2 weeks. I think that's kind of standard for walking, and it was more or less self-supported. So I did it with my girlfriend, and I did have my dad drop off food supplies and things like that. But we basically carried our lives on our backs for 2 weeks, up to the lighthouse.
Fantastic!
And I highly recommend doing that. It's really good.
Yeah, well, I would say that's exactly how I got to learn the trail at the beginning. I walked the whole thing over 2 weeks with my wife, Heather. It was a brilliant adventure. I would entirely recommend that to anybody interested in the Cape Wrath Ultra or the Cape Wrath Trail. They are very similar routes. Absolutely fantastic journey. So just to ask then, what was it that kind of actually made you decide you wanted to come back and run the trail rather than walk it?
I think being part of a big running event. I think every running event I've been part of up until doing the Cape Wrath Ultra was low key, and I'd always thought people have people have half marathons and marathons in their diary from the beginning of the year, and they trained for it right through the summer, and that had never been me. And I thought it would be good to have something to kind of focus my training, focus like my efforts, and have something to look forward to, because I was getting a bit, I just left the military and an office job. I kind of had a kind of angling for an adventure, and it gave me something to kind of look forward to. I think that was pretty much the reason for signing up to it. And also just because I loved doing the trail, and I loved the Scottish countryside, so the wild Scottish countryside. So that's why I signed up.
Brilliant. So how did you go about training for it? I know you've done a lot of Munro bagging. Was that part of your training?
Yeah, it wasn't a specific training plan that I had. I've got a coach, but he kind of coaches me and us for short distance, and I was a bit nervous about telling him about the Cape Wrath, to be honest, because I didn't think he'd be very happy with my choice to do it. But yeah, it was Munro bagging. I tried to up my mileage a bit, but I had a bit of an injury, so really it was just maintaining 2 speed sessions a week or 1 speed session a week. I'd nearly getting around 50 miles a week at that time, and I do a lot of gym work as well, just to kind of strengthen ligaments and tendons in the legs. And I've always done that. I think that I didn't think it at the time, but actually that stood me in good stead in the ultras. Even though I maybe carry a bit more weight than other runners, you kind of have a little bit of more, perhaps you're a little bit more robust in the joints. Having said that, I did start to break down towards the end of the Cape Wrath Ultra, so maybe it wasn't true, but yeah.
I think that a lot of runners are starting to break down towards the end of Cape Wrath, and we actually see quite a difference between Dragon's Back and Cape Wrath. Just 6 to 8 days, those extra 2 days do take their toll, even though the distances are quite similar. It is noticeable. And another interesting thing you just mentioned there was the strength and conditioning work. And as we talk to more and more participants, and particularly the participants who do well, let's say in the top 10%, there's a very consistent theme coming back about strength and conditioning work.
Yeah. No, and I think I've read a lot that validated that, and it wasn't a deliberate approach, it was just an accidental approach. But doing resistance training and the benefits of that for running, especially running long distance, I can definitely vouch for that.
Yeah. Eleanor?
I'm really interested, just sorry, kind of going off on a bit of a tangent. You said that your coach, you kind of didn't tell them about Cape Wrath. Did you eventually tell them? Or?
Yeah, so I really need to, I don't know if I have a unique relationship with he's a really nice guy. I could give a shout out from Ian Lithen, and he essentially provides 2 speed sessions a week, and then he coaches me for free. He just posts them in a chat, and he's usually there, and we meet up and we do the session. But he is quite keen for us to do things like 5K, 10K, half marathon. I think he even, maybe he'll forgive me for saying this, turns his nose up at a marathon. So I just was nervous about saying that I was doing this to him. But to be fair, he was really lovely during it, and after sent me a really nice message and stuff like that. It meant a lot to hear from him. So yeah, and I didn't tell him.
Brilliant. That's so funny. Sorry, that wasn't one of the questions. I was just interested to know more about that.
It's a good question. So I'll ask you about any uncertainties you had heading into that race, and actually just to pick you up on something you mentioned earlier, you talked about going on an adventure.
Yeah.
If anyone's heard me talking, I was talking at the National Running Show on the weekend. I often say that you can't have an adventure without uncertainty.
Yeah.
And you need a little bit of uncertainty, maybe even jeopardy, to create that sense of adventure. And nobody starts an event like the Cape Wrath Ultra with certainty of finishing. But what were the top things in your mind as you got on that boat to cross Loch Linney to start the race? Then you must have been thinking, God, I hope X, Y, or Z. What were they?
Yeah, the nervousness was around like my longevity in the race, to be honest. I think a lot of people were worried about kit, and I did have that nervousness, but by the time I was on the boat, I was like, well, I've already been through kit check. So it was more around, I maybe had a bit of imposter syndrome with being around other ultra athletes and this being my first one, and thinking I might blow up in various ways. I've even had, so I've done a fell race near me called the Durrisdeer Fell Race. I don't know if anyone's
I know Durrisdeer.
It's not even that long. It's just shy of 10 miles, but I've done it twice in my life, and both times I've kind of blown up. And it's because it undulates quite a bit and it contours. And I just thought, that's exactly what the Cape Wrath is like. Like, I wonder if I'm gonna the wheels are gonna fall off pretty soon, and then I'm gonna look a bit stupid. So I think that was my biggest one. Navigation, because I'd done it in the past, I wasn't so worried about navigation, but I did think if the conditions were poor, that might also be a problem. But we were really fortunate, weren't we? So it was great conditions. So I wasn't too worried about that. And as you go through obviously I had navigation errors, but as you go through the days and you shake them off, you kind of gain in confidence, and your navigation gets better and better as it goes on.
Eleanor, before you ask that question, I'm just going to say to everybody, I'm going to drop into the chat a little bit about following the route, because we provide everybody with a GPX, which you can add to a watch or a smartphone. So whilst the event does have its navigational challenges, we're not talking about orienteering style map and compass challenges here.
Yeah, I'm just actually trying to find the article about guidance on following the route, so
I'll find it.
It goes on your watch, and you and obviously your watch gives you notifications when you're going off track and things like that. But that I'm the sort of idiot that can still get lost, and even with that help. But yeah, no, it was fine.
Okay, I found the right article. I'll drop that into the chat.
Great. I'm really interested to hear about your nutrition strategy. So because you hadn't done loads of ultras before, how did you go about planning your nutrition, and what did you eat?
I obviously, I watched YouTube videos. I looked at reviews of bars, and I went for Vela Forte bars. I went for, I kind of went for the natural approach, because I'd never had a gel before. So I didn't want to just rely on those in such a long, those were like my break glass in an emergency nutrition. So I think nutrition strategy, or lack of, was whatever I had enough saliva in my mouth to chew and consume, and that tended to be towards the start of the day more solid foods, and I try and eat quite early before I got hungry, because that's the advice I've been given. And then as the race went on, especially on the longer days, it did become difficult to take on those types of food, but chews and bars were easier, more soluble, and then very much towards the end of the day, perhaps I'd dip into a gel. But I took my first gel coming down on day 2 into Barrisdale, and I really thought, oh goodness me, it's probably not the right time to be having your first trip. It was completely fine. It was one of those goo caramel gels, and it went down a treat, and I was really lucky.
That's so we were speaking with some of the kind of other winners of our long races at the National Running Show on the weekend, and nutrition is a topic that always comes up. And Hugh Chatfield and Robin Cassidy, Dragon's Back winners, they had an absolutely detailed Excel spreadsheet plan of how many gels per hour and calories per hour. It doesn't look like you took that approach.
No, sorry. Yeah. don't really have a nutrition strategy per se, but I always came back with food. I think generally I always had, like at the end of the day, I always had a gel or two to spare. So I'd managed to judge it okay, without going down that route. But I think as I'm obviously doing the Northern Traverse, I think that might need to be a bit more strategic, because I always knew I would be getting in and have a bowl of chips and salt and soup, and then I'd have a dinner as well when I was on the Cape Wrath. I had that to look forward to. Whereas I think the approach will need to be remastered somewhat for the Northern Traverse. But yeah, no really prescriptive nutrition strategy for me. Just eat, but general rules like eating before you get hungry, not waiting, because I think that is definitely too late. Yeah.
So
sorry, I was just going to say, for anyone interested in nutrition, I've actually posted a link to one of our webinars that we did with Renee McGregor, who's a leading sports dietitian. So I've posted that link to that webinar in the chat, because she is full of loads of super useful advice, and she actually joined us at the running show this weekend as well. So definitely worth a watch for anyone who's interested in that.
And on a kind of a related note, Renee's just moved to Kendal, and I was around at her house for dinner a few weeks ago, and she's taken part in Dragon's Back this year, and she was asking me lots and lots of questions about the Dragon's Back, and I was like, right, okay, I've got lots of questions about nutrition then. Spend the evening trading our expertise, I guess. It's good. So I was going to ask you about if there was anything that you felt. Actually, I'm definitely going to ask about Northern Traverse. But we'll come back to that in a minute, because it's such a different race to Cape Wrath. But before we move on to that, what were the things that worked well for you at Cape Wrath? If you were going to do another kind of stage race, what would you go with? What would the go-to strategy or kit be?
Things that worked well. So I'll begin with the things that worked well. I did try and eat as much as I could when I got into camp. I tried to hydrate as much as I could. I did have a little routine where I got in, I took off my shoes, because you feel like just lying back in your tent and with just everything on and just falling asleep. But I was like, I take off my trainers. Fortunately, the weather wasn't too bad, so I'll go to cold water. I'll at least put my lower limbs in to the cold water and try and just give them a little bit of a cool off. It's probably good for recovery. I don't have the science at hand to back that up, but and then I'd go get layers on and get some chips and soup into me. So that routine, I haven't got really anything to compare it to, obviously, but I think that worked well. And getting the sleep. Can I go into things that didn't work well?
That's just
lessons, cautionary tales that I can pass on. So don't follow my trainer strategy, which was had these like Innovate Talons, which are brilliant shoes, and I still love them, but they're very minimalist. And they served me very well on like day 2 when the going was boggy and my sort of joints and muscles were feeling somewhat human. But as I started to degrade, I can remember going through the Fisherfield Forest, and it was quite rocky, and I was just feeling every single step. And I was really lucky to have someone who on the race who lent me a pair of their shoes. I'm not sure if that's within the race rules, but
it's okay.
He gave me a pair of his. It was basically my trainers, but the ultra version. So I had a lot more padding, and it just made a massive difference. So yeah, so do, even if you are someone who, like me, who likes minimalist shoes, doesn't like too much of a stack, I definitely would go with a stack and cushion in for one of these races. I'm probably preaching to people that are like, yeah, of course, why would you ever not do that? But I didn't, so don't be me. And other things perhaps that what worked well. Probably getting to know the camp team. Like having a really good relationship with people in my tent, a really productive relationship. Where we could like share our anxieties and bond over that, and pour over the map at night, and have banter at the in the food tent, and all that just added to the experience. So I just definitely would advise building as many connections because you can, because you have all that time in the evening and even in the morning, and during the race as well. You can chat to people as you go by them. So that just made the event for me, I think. That and the scenery, I think, probably that would be my top tip.
That leads us on really nicely to my next question, which is, what were your race highlights?
Not the except finishing. It would be I loved day 2 when you go through Noidart, and all it's just super remote, stunning landscape. And I think when I finished day 2, I kind of got a sense of, okay, I'm pretty confident I'm going to finish this. I'll finish it somehow, which was an anxiety before I started. But another highlight would be the next day after that, when again, that's a lovely, going through like an area of Scotland called Kintail. Some beautiful scenery, and because it's a long day as well, I had a chance to chat with everyone in the field, and pretty much by that point I'd kind of built a little personal relationship with all of them, and particularly a guy called Sam Hill who we ran together at the end. And it was, at this point we'd done maybe like 40 miles, and I'd been trying to chase him, but we went over together in the hill, and you come down into Camp Free, which I think is Achnasheen or near Achnasheen.
Yeah.
Shane, somewhere like that, and you can see the camp. And I was with him, and I was just like, and we were descending, and we were trying to race each other down this hill, and that was probably the highlight of the trip, the adventure.
So I kind of like a bit of a follow-up question for me, and somebody in the Q&A has just asked about foot care, and I'm going to post a link into the chat in a moment, or maybe Eleanor, you could do the foot care link.
But I'm find this now.
Great. I was going to ask you a little anecdote. I was in a bothy on Skye a few months ago, arrived in the dark with some other people there as well. And it was really obvious. There's a couple of slightly chaotically organised hill walkers, and there was a quiet guy in the corner who had all of his kit like neatly folded, and it had its bag. And I got chatting with him, and it turns out ex-Marine.
What was his name?
Yeah, sorry.
What was his name?
I can't remember his name actually, but it just struck me straight away. This is someone who has got his kit dialed. He's got his personal admin sorted, and I think again that is a hallmark of not just the fast participants at our long races, but all of our finishers. They are good with their admin, and they've thought about this before they turn up. So could you just expand on that maybe?
Yeah. I wasn't naturally that person when I was born, but I think I've become it's been drilled into me to have my waterproofs, my softy, my warm jacket, all that kind of stuff, gloves, hat. So I do like to have that sorted before I sort of relax for the evening. So as part of my routine probably was sorting out my bag for the next day. I didn't want to leave that till the morning, or I wouldn't sleep properly. So I'd come back and I'd probably pack my bag before I'd had my dinner. But there were people in my tent that weren't in the military. There was a guy called Mike Bray, came from Australia, and he was super anal about his kit. He had it all laid out. He did his little number on his t-shirt and everything folded, ready to go in, and he was all over his admin. And I think it is really important for peace of mind. Like I it's definitely something. I'm not a kit pest, as it were. I don't have all the gear, but I make sure that I have the fundamentals, which are, full body cover, your navigation system, your food, and I make sure it's packed, and it's in an accessible place. So like I usually pack my bag with in order of, probably not need that, like, for example, my really warm jacket, I was hoping I was never going to need, so it was right down the bottom, as was my emergency blanket, but it was there. But then you always want to have your Gore-Tex thing to hand, just in case the elements come in.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Sounds good. Eleanor?
So did you have any low moments during the race? And if so, how did you overcome these?
I didn't have too many low moments, to be honest. I think towards the end, I was starting to get a little bit of an issue in my knee. And as that sort of developed, I think at the beginning of day 7, I think the night before, as a precaution, I'd gone into the medical tent, and they sort of strapped me right up, and they were really good to me. They gave me the appropriate K-tape, and then when I got up the next morning, I didn't usually do a warm up before the ultra, because I thought I'll just warm up in the first 500 meters, and so when I actually took off, that was when I first ran that morning, and immediately I was like, oh, my knee is really bad. I was struggling to get like sort of freedom of movement, and in terms of like low moments, that was probably it, because I then thought it'd be horrible if I threw this away now on the basis of this. And day 7 is quite a long day, and I was going up from Inchinadam, up the hill, but it did loosen off, and then by the time I'd come over the other side of the hill into, where the biggest waterfall in the UK is, there's a plug for that area, and it's beautiful as you come into sort of Glendu?
I'm pretty sure I saw you along that loch. I think I actually shared a mile or so with you along that bit.
Yeah. Yes, I do recall, yeah. It's very boggy, but I think I caught you after that.
Oh yeah, it was after the bog.
Yeah. Once you get to there's like a bothy, and there's 2 bothies, and then you go up again and come down the other side. Yeah. Then by then it was fine. So it was fine. But that was before that. Eleanor, you weren't around for my low moment, fortunately. But after that, I was on a high because it had subsided, and it was okay after that. I think on the final day as well, I wasn't on the road part. I wasn't really quite up to running as fast as I might want to, but it was okay. It was okay.
So I just want to mention to the people who are posting questions, we are tracking these, and we'll come back to all of them at the end. So please, keep putting the questions in there. We'll come back to them in due course. Another question I was going to ask about Cape Wrath is, and again, talking to lots of runners this weekend at the National Running Show, lots of them are nervous about what camp life will be like. And I mean, I'm someone personally who's, been camping all my life. I absolutely love doing it. But if you're not used to it, perhaps you can just describe that kind of typical evening experience, what goes on, maybe lay people's concerns to rest.
Yeah, it's a really good experience. It's a really positive experience. I presume people who are nervous about it, perhaps are nervous about, will they get enough sleep, because will it be noisy? Will it be comfortable? And those sort of worries. It's not noisy, and I did generally find that I was tired enough to get sleep. I wasn't keeping anyone awake. People weren't keeping me awake. It wasn't loud. So if that is a woe, I would try and allay that by saying that. But in terms of the experience, like, I loved coming in the evening, and I was looking forward to the party that we had enjoyed in the sort of catering tent, and because we had such wonderful weather as well on some of the short days, we enjoyed some of the sunshine, and we were just sitting in the bean bags, and the event team bought ice lollies and all sorts. So camp life is convivial. It's part of the highlight of it, to be honest. But yeah, if you're worried about sort of sleeping rough, sleeping in a tent, that you can sort of maybe practice your what you have for your sleeping arrangement, your air bed, see if that works for you, your sleeping bag. I mean, I perhaps wouldn't turn up with a sleeping bag that I never slept in. You might be a bit cold, or you can bring a sleeping bag layer. They're not very expensive, things like that. Earplugs.
Yeah. I take them pretty much everywhere I go.
It's actually a fun tip that we've learned from other webinars, actually. Some people are really recommending going out for a long run with all your camp kit that you're expecting to use, and then literally camping out. And even though you've got even if it's in your garden or in your living room, but just using the kit that you are intending to bring with you, because then you know exactly what works for you, and you can be like, oh, I didn't have this thing and that was really annoying, and then to have it for next time. So
yeah, 100%.
definitely a tip that I would recommend. So if you could give one piece of advice to someone who is maybe sitting on the fence about signing up, what would that be?
To sell it to them, or advice for preparing. What would a bit of advice be? I think, like, if I think about highlights, there's not really a week that doesn't go by I don't think about like my time there, and very fondly, and the people I met, and the experience I had and stuff like that. So and I did, I looked at it for quite a long while. I was a few weeks, and I kept looking at entering and when it was, and could I take the time off work, and how would I, someone look after my dog and all this kind of stuff. And in the end, I went for it, and I'm so glad that I did take the plunge. So yeah, my advice would be, take the leap if you're ready. Obviously, and maybe if not this year, and you do want to do it. This is people who do want to do it. Mark when you do want to do it, and work towards that. So obviously, it is a big undertaking. I mean, you will be catered for and looked after, but it's an adventure nonetheless. It's a proper adventure, so you want to be prepared.
Brilliant. So we've got quite a lot of questions about Cape Wrath, but I'm gonna we'll come back to this question. I've definitely not forgot them, but I'm going to change track a little now and ask you about the Northern Traverse. So apart from the shoes, which you've already mentioned, how are your preparations differing for the Northern Traverse? And actually, before you start, I'll just very briefly for our viewers this evening, I'll just explain Cape Wrath, 8 days stage race. So every day you come to a stop, and the clock stops when you're at the overnight camp. Albeit, I like to say that the race continues. Looking after yourself overnight is all part of the journey. At the Northern Traverse, this is a non-stop format. So you're racing 300 kilometers following the Wainwright coast-to-coast route across northern England. You go through 3 national parks. There's about 5 or 6 big support stations. You can choose to sleep them at those locations if you want, but when you sleep, the clock keeps ticking. So very different races. So sorry, I've kind of interrupted. How are your preparations going, David?
I'm keen to ask you, like, how I should prepare, or how much sleep should I have? Can I just strong it out with no sleep, or to be like, that's a bit of an unknown. And I think I'll probably delve more into my podcasts and books on on these continuous races where you have to sleep. And I was watching the spine race as well, and interested to see how long people spend in aid stations, because it's genuinely a knowledge gap of my own. But in terms of my preparations, I have lately I've upped my mileage sort of gently. I'm trying to, as I said before, I was give or take 50 or so miles a week, so not ridiculous mileage. I mean, that might be quite high for some people, but a lot of people do much more than that. I think well, I've got about 2 solid months, 2 months of training. So February, well, I've only got 1 month, haven't I? I'll probably continue with my 70 miles a week. I'm going to try and wreck it. There was a guy that was working on the Cape Wrath last year, Marcus Taylor, and I helped with his Bob Graham. So I'm hoping that he's going to take me out a recce of the Northern Traverse, because we're doing it together this year. I don't have that advantage this year. I don't have the geographical know-how of the area, unfortunately. But I think my training strategy will be, as you quite rightly identified, Shane, learning from my mistakes of footwear. So something it'll be much more padded this time, and I'll play it by ear with sleep. I'll just listen to my body and also take advice from people and try my best to heed it and not be stubborn.
So I guess I have a slight advantage here in that whilst I've not done the Northern Traverse in race conditions, I've done the race routes. I know the route, and I have spoken to many of the finishers at length, and we were interviewing some of the winners at the National Running Show on the weekend. And that the sleep strategy for the fast people seems to be, if you can go for about 48 hours and think you can finish within that time, you don't sleep and you just push through.
Right.
Beyond 48 hours, most people think you need to have a sleep at some point. And Lisa Watson, female winner, amazing athlete, super experienced. She was just saying how a 2-hour sleep absolutely transformed her race from, sleep monsters and struggling and feeling terrible to feeling pretty sprightly to finish
and
off.
Was that on the Northern Traverse?
That was on the Northern Traverse, yeah. So there's lots of advice, things you can't really train for that, can you? You just have to learn.
You can. I caught up with Gavin Bussey, and Paul Manson, who are previous Cape Wrathers, at Christmas, and I was just asking them the same question. And then I think I said to Gavin, I might try and do the West Highland Way and just do it over 2 days and camp 1 day. And he was like, why on earth would you do that? Why would you train yourself to such an extent where you could risk injury? And I was thinking, that's so true. You can't actually really properly train for an ultra. You can prepare, but you can't really do a simulation of the thing.
100%.
Yeah.
Everyone we were speaking to at the weekend was saying, don't try and deprive yourself of sleep to train for that. Instead, you should bank as much sleep as you can, go into it rested rather than tired. I'm interested to know what drew you to the Northern Traverse after the Cape Wrath, given it's such a different race. Is that why? Or
yeah, it's the difference, Eleanor. If I did think about the Dragon's Back, because I thought, that would just be like the Cape Wrath in Wales. My dad's Welsh, and I was like, I'd love to do that. It's beautiful, beautiful wild country like the Cape Wrath, and it's probably more what I would excel at than a continuous one. But I just thought I should try something different. I should try a non-stop. I've looked at people doing spine races, and so I've kind of thought I'd love to feel what it's like to run at night and run not only tired in your muscular skeletal system, but what that level of fatigue in the mind, what it's like when that sets in. Not that I've never been sleep deprived before, but I've never been sleep deprived and have to run through the night, and I quite like to kind of have a go at that.
Well, it's certainly a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry, Eleanor, have you got any more questions? I've kind of lost my thread.
No, I haven't, but we've
Okay.
actually had loads of questions in the Q&A. So shall we start going through some
Yeah,
of those?
let's do that. You take the first one.
Yeah, okay. So someone has asked polls or no polls. From memory, they don't think that you or Joe Meek had them, but in hindsight, do you think that was the right call, or do you wish you had taken them?
I've never trained with poles. I don't own a pair. I'm sure they have a benefit, and I might. I mean, my dad has a pair of walking poles, so I might give them a go next time I'm on a long run. But I can't make a recommendation because I don't train with poles personally, so I don't know the answer. But yeah, they're right in saying I didn't use poles. Fernando, who was running with me, he sort of told me that I need them basically in Spanish, and I was like, "You're probably right, Fernando." I haven't got around to that yet. So, what do you guys think? Just polls beneficial?
Very personal choice, I
It's
think.
personal. I think
Yeah.
for me personally, it depends on what I'm doing. I don't think there's a universal answer, and I think particularly if I'm on my own in the mountains, I might take poles with me, but maybe only use them when I'm going up the steepest uphills and I'm at walking speed. But when you're on your own, you need your hands to be able to navigate. You need to be able to feed yourself easily. And I think it's really easy to stop feeding yourself and stop focusing on the navigation if you're just pushing away with poles all the time. So I personally think they've got a time and a place for sure, but I'm not a universal user of them.
Yeah, I do like to use them on longer stuff on hills especially, and I know a lot of women prefer to use them. This is absolutely, men use poles as well. This is not a generalization at all, but some like it is a thing about women's hips being wider can cause knee issues a bit more. So I think I know a lot of women who have knee issues who like to use them for that reason. And I personally find them helpful, but I would only use them really on the longer stuff and generally on the hillier stuff. I wouldn't really use them flat.
Yeah, I've definitely people who use them tell me it conserves their energy on going uphill, and I can believe that. I guess it's 4 points of contact. I take your point as well, Lucian, that it might sidetrack you from looking at the map, and also taking on food. I just my memory is that I never took them when a lot of people walk with poles, and I don't walk with poles, and then so my dad's probably not very experienced. I hope he never watches this, but he's 70 years old and he'll probably concede this point. He uses poles, right, and it does help him go up the hill, but as soon as he's going downhill, he's not got the correct bag to clip them in, and he's just limbs everywhere. So yeah, from that perspective, and there is some not too technical descending, but definitely descending on the Cape Wrath where you'd want to be stowing your poles, you want to have both hands free. So
yeah.
if you're in.
Okay, so there's another question from Ian. It's a good question relating to imposter syndrome. And I think everybody I think many people have felt this in different elements of life, work, friends, racing at times. But there must have been a point when you thought, oh my goodness, I might actually win this. So they're back to Cape Wrath. At what point was that?
Is that Ian Bethune?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Oh, hi Ian. I remember Ian from last year. So the question was around imposter syndrome.
About imposter syndrome. So I guess at what point in the race did you have this realization that I might win this? And how did that feel?
I think at the end of day two, I think I came day one. It's easy to like. I came in and I think Eleanor, you were the first person that said, and when you kind of came over to me at the end of the day two, and you were like, yeah, I had a microphone. I was a bit like I'd never been interviewed before, and I was a bit taken aback. And you were like, "Oh, I noticed you've done a fast time. Are you here to win it and stuff like that?" And I didn't really know what to say, because I honestly didn't come to win. But that said, I am very competitive. And when I came in, we were still in signal, and Glenfinnan, you still get phone signal, is what I'm sort of trying to say. And all my friends were messaging, and they were like, quite abusive. Just saying like, you've overshot yourself. Like, who do you think you are? But I'm sure caring, and I was touched that they were at least tracking the event. But yeah, so then that night I still didn't entertain the thought. I think it was the second day, because the second day there's like over 30 miles, and I think when I came in, after that day, I thought, okay, I could hold on. I did have lots of doubts, and I thought, Fernando, Sam probably have more miles in the legs than I do. So I did think that they could catch me, but I then really considered myself to be trying to win. Rather than at the start when I was like, I want to complete this. It was like, now I want to try and hold on as best I can. So yeah, but plenty of imposter syndrome. Plenty of that.
I have to say, it was pretty impressive, because I remember you coming in on day one and you'd absolutely flown around, and everyone was like, wow, he's going really quick. Do you really hold on? And then you did. You just did each day.
Yeah. I've actually got the results up here. Sorry, I've got the results up on the screen, on my other screen. I'm looking at them now, and they're really good times. They're really consistent. It's great.
The thing is about the times as well. You've got with this kind of thing, you've got, unless you compare it to previous years, it's not like a set distance. So you can't go on going fast or on going slow, because there's so many ups and downs, and so pacing and that, doesn't go out the window. That's not correct. Definitely pace yourself. That's the wrong message to be putting out there. But you can't. I didn't really know how long a 40-mile day would take me, to be honest. Because I don't know what like a 40-mile day, how much elevation, very, very unforgiving terrain, bog, how long that's going to add to my time as well. So with no concept of how fast, and that probably helps, because you're less sort of prisoner to the clock. Yeah.
I think one of the Sorry, you go, Eleanor.
Sorry, Shane. No, you go, Shane.
I was just going to say, one of the wonderful things about ultras is that people don't say to you, what's your time? When you talked about doing ultras, they say, oh, what race did you do?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they that's so true. What ones are you doing? What are you training for? Yeah.
Okay.
It's nice.
It is great. Right. So someone's asked about feet, and how I obviously already put the article in the chat with guidance on looking after your feet, but how did you manage your feet? Did you do taping? Did you have specific socks? What did you do?
I did invest in a pair of socks. I had features, and I think hilly socks. I usually don't go in for that kind of thing, but I just thought, to give me every chance of not picking up a sort of blister, I'd go that way. And I should say as well, my trainers were quite broken in, perhaps too broken in for the ultra, but so definitely, in terms of preparation, definitely do that. And then when I was sort of preparing for the day, I guess I'd try and put my socks and shoes on with dry feet. I was fortunate because every day was dry, so I wasn't really getting wet feet. But then after, probably the most important thing is the after foot care. And like I said, I would take my shoes off, take my socks off, air them out, soak them, and then continue to air them out for that evening. That I didn't really put socks back on in the evening, for example. I'm quite fortunate, and I am touching wood with everything I've got here. I don't tend to pick up blisters. I think if you are one of those people, then maybe a pair of Vaseline helps in the hot spots. But I'll let people who deal with that speak up more. Yeah, I didn't actually get any blisters, which was really fortunate.
That's great.
Very lucky. Very lucky.
God, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked here as well. Q&A, right? So next question is, I guess, to what extent were you able to rely on a watch for navigation? How often did you pull out the map? What was your kind of approach to that?
Yeah, so I was fortunate in, and not having having done the route before. So not only did the watch was, I've got a Phoenix, and I've never experienced another watch, but my watch was so good when I downloaded the GPX file that it genuinely just guided me the whole way. Visibility was excellent. But the things that I would recommend are that we did were studying the map in the evening with your tent mates. It was definitely a good practice to get into, just as much as anything else, just preparing you for what's coming the next day. And I think certainly the Cape Wrath Trail, the normal maps, but I think the maps you're provided, the route provides you with what sort of trail you can expect. Is that still the case? Yeah. So it sort of breaks it down between road, forest track, and then your slightly more untrodden footpaths over belacs and so forth. Watch navigation. My watch had notifications on, so it vibrated and it screamed at me when I was going off track and things like that. So that was really beneficial.
I might just add, so I know that first of all, in the Cape Wrath Ultra follows the natural route through the Scottish Glens, and again, I've got the homepage, the website flicking up on the other screen at the moment, and what you see in those photos is often a trail or a track on the ground, and then bog and tussocks to the side. So you're not going to be in any doubt about whether you're on the path or not, because often there is just one path. The other thing I would say is that we have surveyed our participants last year, and we asked them how did they choose to navigate. I think we did this after the Dragon's Back race. Something like 80% of people came back. It was a very high number, and said entirely on their watch. That's how they completed the race. Yeah. So it can be done just on the watch, and is regularly done. And the one word of caution I would add to everyone listening is every year our response team will do at least one extraction of the course of a participant whose batteries are run out on their watch, and they have no backup. Like, they don't have the GPX on their phone, they can't navigate with a map and compass, and they literally come to a grinding halt and go, I don't know where to go. So you can do it on a watch and a phone, but if you can learn those navigational skills using a map and a compass, even at just a basic level, they are very liberating, and they open up adventures all over the world for you.
It's satisfying. It's satisfying doing it with a map and a compass. I hold my hands up and said I didn't do it with a map and compass, but I had the map and the compass if I needed them. But the watch, as you say, can take you to the lighthouse pretty much, as long as you've got good drills about charging it in the evening.
Yeah, but it's true actually. Jo Meek, who was the female winner of Cape Wrath, she actually did have a day where her watch died, and so she had to map and compass it for, I think it was day 6. So
that's right.
Yeah, definitely worth. Obviously, you have to have it as a backup, but also worth knowing how to use it.
Yeah.
So there's an interesting question here, which might actually be better answered by Shane, but someone's asked about how you determine the optimal time to leave camp each day. I guess, Shane, it might help for you to kind of explain how it works with start times.
I'll give the theory, and then David can do as in reality. This is what I did. So there is a start window between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. Sorry, start again. 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. A 3-hour window each morning, and we will give participants advice when they get their splits from the day they've just completed. And it might say, based on your time today, we suggest you start at X time. It's a half-hour window. But because we know participants might have a fast day and they think I need to go slower tomorrow, or they might have picked up an injury and they're expecting to go slower tomorrow, we don't enforce that start time on people. The responsibility to choose a start time is absolutely on the participant. The thing to bear in mind is the course closure time is 10 p.m. and all of the cut-offs worked out through the day are based on finishing by 10 p.m, starting at 6 a.m. So if you're, let's say, in the slowest 10% of the participants, starting at 6 a.m. is really important. You need to do that. If you're in the middle of a pack runner, you can start at 7, and you might feel tight against the earlier cut-offs, but you'll be hours and hours ahead of the 10 p.m. cut-off by the end of the day. David, what was your strategy?
Yeah, I try. I didn't have a strategy going into it. I was fully expecting to be going with the normal pack at circa 7 a.m. But I was one of those people that were asked to start, I think, after 8. From memory, I can't remember exactly, but basically after people had started, which was good to gives you breakfast, leisurely breakfast, and also Fernando was always Fernando was always trying to wait till I had set off. I don't know if that was psychological tactics there, and so that he'd be chasing me, and I'd feel chased, like a hunted animal. But yeah, I try and get off as usually as soon as I could, but yeah, I think that was around about 8 a.m, just after 8. Would that be right?
Yeah, that's about right. I should add a clarification to that. The only people we start mandating start times to actually is the fastest 1 or 2 runners, because if they go out at 6 a.m, they just get ahead of our logistics and our safety team. So yeah, if you're sat there listening to this thinking I'm going to go smash a course record, you might find you're starting at 8 or 8:30 in the morning.
Yeah. But it was quite nice. I watched people that started at 7, and there's like a ceremony to it. It's like a countdown, and you feel part of it. And you start with everyone, and like I guess starting at 8, I missed that. I just had Fernando breathing down my neck, so that was it.
Yeah, you've just said an important thing about it's not 6 a.m, it's 7 a.m. is the first start. Yeah, I've just realised that as well.
I was thinking that, I don't want to.
Sorry, that's my mistake. I'm thinking about Dragon's Back start times, which is 6 till 9.
Okay.
Right, so important clarification. Eleanor, do you want to jump in?
I was sorry, I was just going to switch over to the questions on the chat because we've got through the Q&A ones now. So someone has asked, what was your recovery like after you completed the full race?
Yeah, again, I soundboarded a lot of people on the race about that, what I should do. So my personal experience was when I got home, like after a couple of days, like my muscles were okay, and I probably mistook that as I'm ready to not go back in full hog, but I started going on runs and things like that. And I think I did, looking back, and again, this is my first time, so like learn from my mistakes. It's always better to learn from other people's mistakes. I definitely felt it in my feet and my joints. Like your muscles come back, or I'm speaking from personal experience, your muscles come back quite quickly, and the strain on the rest of your body takes a little bit more time, and that was my experience. So I tried to take it easy, But you do want to get back into it. I think it was about 3 or so, or perhaps more weeks before I was feeling right as rain, to really go back to how things were before. But even at that, I maybe preempted it a bit came back into it too quickly. Yeah, I wouldn't follow my methods. I try and learn from where it maybe didn't go wrong. And I think where it did go wrong, and I think it definitely, my recovery wasn't a well thought out sort of strategy. And I think this year that's something, a learning point I'll take in coming off the Northern Traverse. I'll probably just give myself a wider berth, go into try and maybe go to the swimming pool, do things that are non-impact or low impact. Because although you might feel like, the muscles are coming back, like I say, it does take a while for other parts of your system to kind of heal up. Yeah.
So I'm just posting into the chat a little message that we pretty much copy and paste into each of our post-event reports about ongoing recovery. And I'll put the whole of it's actually my race director's report from last year. I'll put, for those who are interested, the whole report is there. But essentially what we say, and this is entirely anecdotal, 4 weeks of rest after Cape Wrath, 10 weeks of taking it easy. And I think, unfortunately, over the years, we have come across a small number of participants that have developed chronic fatigue by going straight from Cape Wrath or Dragon's Back and going into hard training and racing again. So take it easy. You've definitely earned the the rest once you've finished something like this. Eleanor, do you want to ask the next question?
Absolutely, yeah. So for hydration, how much did you carry with you versus filtering or filling up en route?
I carried, from memory, I had 3 litres, so I had a litre in each what do you call it, shoulder strap with these water bottles, and then I had one in my backpack that had a sort of mixture in it. I might say something quite naughty. I didn't actually filter my water at all, because I generally, I don't tend to do that, and when I'm taking water from height, and I was okay with that. Perhaps people who filter water will know better. But I was, whenever we got up into at height and there was fast running water, and it looked like it came from an area which was free from dead livestock, I took the chance to kind of to fill up my bottles. But I wasn't overhydrating. We were fortunate in that it was it was good weather, but I think I've heard the Dragon's Back was much hotter.
Yeah.
The scope for dehydrating or overhydrating is much higher. Whereas, so I kind of tried to keep them filled at all times, simply because I didn't know when I'd next see water. But in reality, on the Cape Wrath, whilst that's a really good practice, you do see water quite a lot. But I didn't have a filtering system. I don't know if anyone can speak to that.
Well, I might just add, particularly for our international participants, and there's certain places, North America is a great example where there's some pretty horrible diseases that are endemic in the water supply, and you just don't routinely drink out of, you don't drink untreated water. Actually, in places like the Scottish Highlands, the water, particularly from the upland lochs and streams, is very good quality. And you can usually, I'm a big caveat that I usually drink it without problem. To give you some context, I've been running in the British Hills for 30 years. I drink anything and everything. If I just excuse, I'm not going to drink out of water that's running out of a farmyard or anything like that. When I'm up on the high hills, I drink anything. And I've had 2 instances of kind of, diarrhea, vomiting response to bad water in 30 years. And it's pretty obvious when you've drunk something that's bad, about it.
Yeah, it's generally safe, but obviously a very personal preference, and you can't rely on it. But, interesting question here. What is your internal monologue like on tough long days out? when it isn't necessarily going well? Like, how do you keep going? I really like this question.
I do as well. A good question. I'm motivated by the thought of being chased. When for some reason, has anyone seen the film Touching the Void? You know, where when he's talking about coming off when he's broken his leg, he's coming back, and a single song is running through his head on a loop. And I think we can all relate to that.
Yeah.
Each day, a song was running through my head on a loop. But in terms of motivating myself, I was just so determined to finish, and then towards the end, I was so determined to try and hold on to the first place, and like I think that kept me going. That kind of fear of being caught, yeah.
Fair
and
enough.
Also, to be honest, it's not hard to keep going. It's so pretty, and you want to get back to camp and wind down, and it's just a really pleasant experience.
I've got two monitors here. On monitor to my left, I've got the homepage of Cape Wrath on at the moment, with the little video on a loop at the start every 30 seconds. I keep looking at the images, and they're just brilliant. I mean, I can understand why you just want to keep going. I mean, the journey is great.
There's always something to look forward to. There's always some part of, that was part of the night before in camp. We would look at the map, and I'd go, that we'll go over that hill, and you can see Anchelic, or you can see out to especially when you're in Noidart, you can see the sort of Western Isles, and it's just it's incredible.
It is.
Scenery.
Yeah, it is. So we've got a final question here. It's from Matthew, and we've kind of covered it before, but he's asking again about nutrition, and particularly on the long days. I mean, did you want to add anything more? Was there some kind of, are you like a pork pie person, or salt and vinegar crisps?
I did. So I had 3 pork pies purchased from Morrison's in Fort William, which lasted the first 3 days. I think after that, I didn't really want to roll the dice on unrefrigerated pork pies. But sort of nutrition, I'll try and give more. These Vela 40 bars, I can't remember what flavor I had. They were really nice. I had a Soreen loaf, but I do remember really struggling to get that down at some point. So that's maybe something for earlier in the day, but that's a good calorie dense food. I bought Snickers bars, and I can't remember, Stoke bars, the oat bars, natural. I tried to stay natural with my food, things that I would normally conceivably consume. I mean, I'm not taking in malt loaf that often, but it's not alien to my sort of body. So go with that.
Okay. I guess we've run through all the questions. I think we're probably reaching kind of a natural conclusion. I think that's been a fantastic hour, a little bit over. And for me, I just so enjoy these conversations with our participants. They're just great, and I always learn something when I'm chatting to the runners. I would like to say a big thank you to David for giving his time this evening. I want to wish you best of luck at the SILVA Northern Traverse in 3 months' time. There are still a few entries left if people fancy a different kind of challenge, or you can join us at Cape Wrath Ultra in May. So again, a few entries left for that. Also, many thanks to Eleanor, who's working from home, like myself, giving up their evening, but I appreciate that. Could be out running in the fells instead, so that's greatly appreciated.
With your head torch on.
Yeah.
So the weather's not actually that conducive for running in the fells today.
It's not a particularly nice evening in Pendle or in Cumbria. So I will click the kind of end the show. It's a bit of an abrupt end. So David, my apologies that the screen kind of just goes. Thank you everybody for coming this evening and watching and listening. We will put a copy of this onto YouTube afterwards. Probably take a day or so to get it on. If you have any questions, email the office, phone the office, get on the live chat. We're always happy to chat with you. So good night, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.